Imagine coming home after a long day, only to find your husband walking through the door with his lover and her entire family. Everything you built together, your home, your memories, your life, is suddenly shattered. But what would you do if you had the power to take it all back? This is the story of betrayal, heartbreak, and the shocking decision that changed everything. Welcome to Voice of Alicia, where stories breathe, emotions speak, and every word paints a world of its own. Close your eyes, relax your mind, and step into a story crafted just for you. It started like any other morning. The sun streamed softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the living room. I had made myself a cup of coffee and was scrolling through my phone, catching up on messages and the news. My husband had left for a business trip a few days ago, and I thought it was the perfect opportunity to enjoy a little peace and quiet at home. But something in me felt off. Maybe it was just that unsettling feeling in my gut, the kind you can't explain, the kind that whispers that life is about to change. I tried to shake it off and focus on my routine. I did the dishes, watered the plants, and even managed to bake a small batch of cookies, hoping the smell would fill the house and lift my mood. By noon, I decided to sit on the porch with a book. That's when I saw them. My husband, walking up the driveway with a woman I didn't recognize, laughing and holding hands as if the world belonged to them. At first, I thought I must be mistaken. Maybe it was a friend or a colleague from his trip. But as I got closer, the truth hit me like a punch to the chest. It wasn't a colleague. It was her, his lover. And behind them, I saw her family, smiling and chatting as though they owned the place. My heart sank. I froze on the porch, unable to process what I was witnessing. The man I had loved and trusted for years was walking back into our home with someone else, openly, shamelessly, as though nothing mattered. For a moment, I felt numb. Words failed me. I wanted to scream, to run, to demand an explanation, but all I could do was stand there, watching as they entered my home, my sanctuary. The house I had shared with him, filled with our memories, our laughter, our plans for the future, suddenly felt alien. When they finally noticed me standing there, my husband's face was a mix of surprise and guilt. He opened his mouth, probably to explain, to justify, to apologize, but I didn't give him the chance. I walked away. I retreated into the shadows of my own home, feeling the walls close in on me. Every picture on the wall, every cushion, every book, suddenly screamed betrayal. I realized that nothing in that house belonged to me anymore. I spent the rest of the day in silence, avoiding them, avoiding confrontation, pretending to be somewhere else. I couldn't let them see the storm raging inside me. But as night fell, a plan began to form. A plan that would give me back control. A plan that would ensure I didn't just vanish as another wronged wife in a story that would soon be forgotten. I contacted my lawyer the next morning. I asked about selling the house, about reclaiming my independence, about making sure that whatever he thought he could take, whatever new life he imagined, wouldn't come at my expense. The lawyer was careful, explaining the legalities, but I could feel the thrill of empowerment growing inside me. I wasn't just a victim. I was someone who could fight back, quietly, efficiently, without screaming, without begging. By the time my husband returned fully, not from a trip, but into our lives in a new form, I had already taken steps. I had listed the house. Within a week, it had buyers. And as the sale progressed, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The betrayal was still there, the heartbreak still raw, but now I had something more powerful than pain. I had freedom. When the day came for the final signing, I stood in the empty house, looking at the walls, the floors, the memories, and I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt everything at once. Anger, sadness, relief, hope. I realized then that life doesn't stop for betrayal. It doesn't pause for heartbreak. It moves, relentless and unforgiving. And sometimes, so should we. After the house was sold, my life began to change in ways I couldn't have imagined. My husband called, of course. He left messages, texts, even emails. He tried to explain, to charm, to guilt me. But I had discovered something crucial. Distance breeds clarity. From afar, I could see him as he really was, not as the man I had loved, but as someone who had made a choice that didn't include me. His lover's family reached out too, curious, perhaps even protective of their new member in his life. I ignored them. I realized that engaging with them would only drag me back into the nightmare I was trying to escape. I wanted to start fresh, not with anger as my companion, but with strength. Friends noticed the change in me. Some were shocked at my decision to sell the house so quickly, to cut off ties so decisively. Others admired it. "You took control," they said. And they were right. Selling the house wasn't just about property. It was a declaration, a message to myself, to him, and to the world that I was not someone to be walked over. I moved into a small apartment downtown, somewhere I could see the skyline, feel the pulse of the city, and remind myself that life was bigger than betrayal. The first night, sitting on my balcony, sipping tea and watching the lights flicker below, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. And with peace came clarity. I realized I didn't need him. I didn't need his lover. I didn't need the life we had planned together. I needed me. The process wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when loneliness pressed down, moments when anger threatened to consume me. But each day, I reminded myself why I had made this choice. Every phone call I ignored, every memory I released, every step I took toward independence strengthened me. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to smile again. Then came the unexpected. I received a call from the buyers, a couple eager to move into the house. They had heard about the story through the neighborhood gossip, and when they thanked me for making the sale smooth, for handling everything with such grace, I realized something profound. My pain had a value. My strength, my decisiveness, my refusal to be a victim, these were my victories, and they were mine alone. I began to rebuild my life piece by piece. A new job, new routines, new hobbies. I rediscovered passions I had long buried under the weight of marriage and obligation. I joined a local art class, started volunteering at an animal shelter, even began writing a journal, one that would someday become a memoir, a story of survival and empowerment. And through it all, he lingered in the background, my husband, trying to insert himself into my life in subtle ways. I kept my distance. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, and closure doesn't mean contact. Sometimes the strongest response is silence. And that silence was mine, deafening and complete. Months passed, and the world I had known with him faded like an old photograph left in the sun. I began to see myself not as someone defined by a failed marriage, but as a woman capable of incredible resilience. I took vacations alone, exploring places I had only dreamed of. I traveled to the mountains, the beaches, even to cities abroad. Each trip a declaration of independence, each journey a step further away from betrayal. One day, as I was walking through a park, I realized I hadn't thought of him all morning. And not just that morning. Many mornings had passed without the constant ache of betrayal. I was healing. I was living. And I had done it without needing him, without needing to justify myself, without needing anyone to witness my strength. It wasn't easy. Social events reminded me of him, encounters with couples triggered memories, and sometimes, late at night, I felt the sting of loneliness. But I had learned to confront those feelings head-on. I wrote letters I never sent, spoke my truth in the mirror, and let the tears flow when they needed to. Healing wasn't linear, but it was real, and it was mine. Then came the day I ran into him, unexpected, in a small cafe downtown. He was with her, laughing, completely unaware of the storm he had left behind. I looked at them, and for a fleeting moment, the old anger returned. But then I remembered the house, the independence, the life I had rebuilt. And instead of feeling hurt, I felt nothing. Or maybe everything I felt had been transformed into power. I smiled politely, nodded, and walked away. No confrontation, no drama, no closure needed. I had already closed the chapter myself, in my own way, on my own terms, and that, I realized, was worth far more than any apology, any explanation, or any attempt at reconciliation could ever provide. Time continued to pass, and life, as it always does, moved forward. I made new friends, forged new connections, and even found love again. Not the reckless, consuming love I once thought I needed, but a quiet, steady companionship that respected my boundaries, my strength, and my independence. The lessons I learned from betrayal became my compass. I became someone who trusted cautiously, loved deeply but wisely, and valued herself above all. I refused to let anyone take my peace, my home, or my dignity ever again. And in doing so, I discovered a truth that had been hidden from me for years. Happiness isn't found in others. It's cultivated within. Occasionally, I would hear news of him through mutual acquaintances or social media. He had moved on, remarried, and continued his life without looking back. And I didn't care. My life was mine, and I was no longer tied to his choices, his lies, or his whims. I had sold the house, yes, but I had also sold the illusion that my life depended on him. And that was priceless. I began to write about my journey, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Not as someone who lost, but as someone who won. Not in the way the world sees victory, but in the way that truly matters, reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your joy. Looking back now, I see the entire experience as a turning point. The moment he returned with his lover, I could have crumbled. I could have pleaded. I could have begged for the life I thought I wanted. But instead, I acted. I chose myself. I sold the house, yes, but more importantly, I reclaimed my identity, my voice, and my future. Every step since then has been a reminder that betrayal, no matter how painful, can be transformed into empowerment, that heartbreak can become a catalyst for growth, that endings, no matter how cruel, can lead to beginnings more beautiful than we ever imagined. And now, as I sit in my new home, surrounded by the life I built with my own hands, I know this: I am stronger, wiser, and freer than I have ever been. My husband may have returned with his lover, but I returned to myself, and that was the greatest victory of all. Thank you for spending your time with Alicia. If this story moved you, let your support be felt. Like, share, and subscribe. Your presence inspires the next tale. Until our voices meet again, stay calm, stay curious, and keep dreaming.